Hey guys, and welcome back to the Teach the Children podcast. I am your host, Laura Battles, and today I have a great guest on the show with me from Biblingo. This is a new thing that I was introduced to from our pastor at our church, and once I found out about it, I was like, dude, I got to talk to these guys. I got to get them in front of you all. So I have on here today Austin, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about Biblingo and all that is going on over there. And before we do, though, real quick, I just want to remind everybody that Teach the Children is on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Teach the Children Homeschool Resource Center, Teach the Children TC for Instagram. For the podcast, you can find us on Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. And the new cool thing that I keep talking about is the podcast network Teach the Children is a part of. It's on hfw.network. I will link all this in the show notes so that you can go and check it out. But those are 4 other podcasts that you can get a part of and listen to and just hear more content. I like to listen to other podcasts in other languages, especially if you're trying to learn that language. And so it just helps get all this out there. So make sure you like it, subscribe it, follow it, rate it 5 stars if you think we have earned it. The big one, share it. If you know someone who is thinking about homeschooling, share this podcast with them so that they can hear how easy it is to homeschool and all the resources that are out there to homeschool. So make sure you listen to the end of this podcast. I want to make sure you hear this because there is a cool thing Biblingo and Teach the Children are going to do. We're combining forces and we are going to bring you all something great. So make sure you stay tuned to the end to hear what that great thing is. All right, let's get into it. Austin, it's so great that our paths have crossed. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, how you hooked up with Biblingo.
Thanks for having me, Laura. I'm blessed to be here. So I guess to give context, my career before starting with Biblingo was in early childhood education. So I was an elementary school teacher for approximately, and middle school a little bit for around 6 years. So my bachelor's is in business management. I didn't like corporate America at all, though. So while I was looking for a new job, my friend was basically a principal at an alternative school, part of the public school, but where the students who had behavioral kind of needs would go. And so she told me, hey, while you're waiting, I just graduated college and I had one corporate job and I didn't like it. So I was just waiting and interviewing. She said, hey, why don't you just come here and, tutor and teach math? And so I did that and I really fell in love with it. And so I said, I want to go into teaching. So I got my master's in early childhood education in 2020. And that was so right when COVID happened is right when I finished student teaching. So I taught for 3.5 years in Jewish education. I taught at it was like a conservative synagogue for 3 years. And then I taught at Orthodox school for about half a year. And then I taught most recently English language learners in public school. So I did that for about 1.5 years. And with Biblingo, it's a really amazing God story because long story short, my family lives in 2 different places. My family lives here in Ohio. My wife's family lives in Phoenix. And so a big thing is we want our children to obviously know, both sets of grandparents. And, I'm very close with my cousins, big Italian family. So we're just kind of, working through that. And I wanted a remote job. So what I was doing was just applying for just regular kind of teaching jobs, online teaching jobs. A lot of like even the public school I taught at had an online kind of school associated with it. So I was just applying to dozens and dozens. I wasn't getting callbacks on anything. So I'm like, God, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? And so I saw on X someone reposted a giveaway saying, hey, we're giving away a lifetime subscription for Biblingo for free. Oh, cool. Just, retweet this and, basically some kind of sweepstake kind of thing. And I'm like, what is this? And so I looked at it and I'm like, whoa, this is actually an app for the biblical languages. being that I worked at in Jewish education, my wife's family is from Greece. Her grandfather is from Kefalonia, which is a Greek island. So she grew up speaking Greek. So she speaks modern Greek with the children. I speak Italian with the children. But being around that, I've really gotten to fall in love with the biblical languages over the last couple of
Cool.
years. And so it was strange because I'd never heard of this before ever. So I'm
Yeah.
like, what is this? So I reached out on LinkedIn. I'm like, maybe they're hiring. They didn't have any job listings, but I reached out on LinkedIn and I got an interview and here we are. So I am
Cool.
just finishing about my second month and I'm loving every minute of it. I have my passion and then a career all in one. So I can't really ask for anything more.
Cool. That is an awesome God story, especially since they had no positions open and you got one.
Yeah.
So you are the homeschool liaison for them. Do you homeschool? Were you homeschooled?
Okay, so I was not homeschooled. I actually attended public school growing up, but I do plan on homeschooling when my children are old enough. So my wife and I have a 3-year-old daughter, and we have a 1.5-year-old son. So once they are old enough, we will definitely be homeschooling them. Arizona luckily has one of the best ESA programs in the country. So depending on your child and if they have maybe like an IEP or things like that, if they don't have an IEP, they would get around $6,000 to $7,000 annually, and if they have more needs, they would receive more funds. So that's a really great opportunity, and I do not want to pass up on that. Having taught in public school, I know just kind of what happens during a day and how much time is lost for just transitions and all sorts of stuff. So I feel like it's a much more efficient use, at least in my situation with my children. And just because we are raising them multilingually, they
Yeah.
won't really get that in public school or maybe even in a private school. But it's great because, homeschooling will just work great for what we want for our children. So really excited for that and all the things we'll get to do.
Yeah, it's surprising how much you can accomplish in a short period of time at home. And I mean, I got to hand it to teachers. They have 30 kids in their classroom. You are just trying to get through your lesson and teach to kids at all levels. So hand it to them. But when I have just 3 kids and I can focus on them at home, we can get through things quickly. And so they're not sitting down doing school for hours on end.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go outside and play and do all sorts of other things, learn languages that they normally wouldn't learn in at school. And so that's cool.
Amen.
So tell us about Biblingo and how we can get it into our school, into our homeschools. Like tell us what's going on there.
Yeah. So Biblingo at a 10,000 foot view is a language learning app for biblical Hebrew and biblical Greek. Eventually next year, the plan is to release Latin and Aramaic. So for those who are very much a fan of classical education, that will be available next year. And so it's similar, I would say, to programs like Duolingo. The thing that is different, though, is that Biblingo is obviously one of the only ones that teaches the biblical languages. So on Biblingo, you can learn modern Hebrew and modern Greek, but you can't obviously learn the biblical version. So it's what I would say is the most developmentally appropriate application for all learners, especially the youngest ones. So it could technically be used by children as young as 3.
Okay.
I've used it with my daughter. Our CEO has a couple children who use it. And so for some of our promo materials, his son will be reading Hebrew on
Cool.
the app. So that's really a testament to
Yeah.
what the app can do, because that's pretty much been his primary form of Hebrew instruction. But so it takes you from nothing to being able to read the Bible in the original languages. So you'll be learning starting with the alphabet, and then putting those together into chunks, and then words, and then sentences, and then reading stories. And eventually, once they're old enough and can kind of graduate from the kind of homeschool realm, there's
Mhm.
a part of Biblingo where there are live classes and things of that nature where
Oh,
people are actually kind of speaking the languages in a kind of like a study classroom format. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Additionally, for the homeschoolers, I would also like to say that we now have a resource hub to support them in their homeschooling of their children, especially in Greek and Hebrew. So we just released an implementation guide to help parents start their child on Biblingo and get them through the first 5 levels. So it includes a schedule, like a scope and sequence for the first 5 levels, just kind of a daily schedule for.
mm,
If you do a 15-minute schedule, there are two different ones you could choose from, like 15 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day. The 15 minutes a day takes you all the way through level 5, which is about 92 instructional days. So it's just to basically help you get started in
okay.
Biblingo, because obviously anything new is kind of jarring and you're like, what is this?
Yes.
So that is there to help families. And also, we've just launched the first 5 assessments for the first 5 levels of Biblingo. So at the end of a level, you can administer this assessment with your child to see if they've mastered that content. And, it very explicitly explains what to do. And you don't need to know Greek or Hebrew to be able to administer it. We've transliterated those assessments very well and have minimized any kind of parental production. So your child should be the one producing the language, and you're just basically checking them. Um, let's
Cool.
see. Now, to actually get it into your homeschool
Yeah.
classroom or your co-op is pretty simple. You would go to biblingo.com and you would go to the homeschool tab. And then depending, you would input the amount of children that you have. So it's a little
Right.
bit different if you're a co-op versus
Yeah.
just your family. Because if it's just your family, you would just make yourself the administrator and then give the email addresses for the children. So you'd have to technically create email addresses for your kids. The
Okay.
co-op might be a little bit different depending on if it's an actual class that you're teaching
Okay.
and using Biblingo as like your curriculum, or if you're just using it kind of as a club. That's
Okay.
a bit of a different part of Biblingo. So if you're using Biblingo to like teach and you're the teacher, it's a little bit different than if your child is just learning by
Okay.
themselves on
Okay.
homeschool. Because technically, you don't need a teacher for just Biblingo homeschool because the app teaches the student everything
Oh,
they need to know.
okay. Cool. So it's all there for you to learn, and you can learn. Parents can learn right alongside their kids. Um, that's cool to do. And then, um, so is there one or the other you should learn? I mean, you said next year you're launching Latin and Aramaic, but Greek or
Mm-hmm.
Hebrew, which one should you start with? Should you be fluent in one before the other? Can you do both concurrently?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it all depends on what your goals are. If your goals for your children are, hey, I want them to be able to, read the entire Bible in the original languages, then obviously you'll need to learn both. It would be a matter of preference. Um, the earlier, the better. So, I mean, people typically would think Hebrew is more difficult because just the alphabet is different. It's a Semitic language and not an Indo-European language like Greek and English.
Yeah.
So I would say start as early as you can and start with Hebrew, but I mean you can technically start with both at the same time.
Okay.
And if you're having trouble choosing between one or the other, it might help to determine, like, for example, a lot of people who are kind of in more like a messianic sphere, like myself, Hebrew is a big part of messianic liturgy. So it's much, more pressing to have proficiency in Hebrew to understand, what the prayers are, than
Okay.
Greek, for example, that might not be as part of a service. So you'd kind of just have to figure out for your family what it is that would be most pressing for you. I mean, with my family, it's easy because my wife speaks Greek already. So modern Greek and biblical Greek are distinct enough, but when my daughter does Biblingo, most of the vocabulary is pretty similar. The grammar can be slightly different, but
Okay.
and then we're also in the messianic space as well, so they're exposed to Hebrew all the time as well. So it's a hard decision, but technically speaking, if you start your children young, you can do both at the same time, and they would be able to learn both simultaneously without it being an issue. That was a big thing in bilingual education because people, some of the literature suggested that children took longer to talk if they were raised in a bilingual environment. And, although it might be true, eventually it all evens out where they are able to speak at the same level if they are raised with the same amount of input in both languages. So they could technically start with both is the short answer, I guess.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my cousin, he speaks English and his wife speaks Vietnamese.
Cool.
And so at home, they spoke a lot in Vietnamese, and at school and stuff, they spoke in English. And so they are now both of their kids are bilingual in those. And then my cousin also speaks Mandarin, I think a little
Oh,
bit. I
wow.
don't know how fluent he is anymore, but you're right. In the beginning, they spoke a little bit. They were not as, I don't know, it took them longer to speak, but then they caught on, and you would never know now that, now they know three languages.
Yes.
And so,
No, it's incredible what the brain is capable of
yes.
with my family. So like I mentioned before, so my wife speaks to the children in modern Greek, and I do Italian. So Greek, Italian. We also do speak Spanish
Okay.
with them. So we've gone to lots of different churches. We've moved a lot, so we've gone to Spanish speaking churches. So so Greek, Italian, Spanish, and then English because my
Okay.
parents and my wife's parents speak to the children in English. So
Yeah.
technically the children understand four languages. My daughter doesn't speak Italian as much. She's passively, bilingual, well, passively multilingual, I would say,
Okay.
because I don't, obviously I work, so I am not able to spend all day like my wife
Yeah.
does. So, but she's able to understand completely everything in all of those four languages. So I always encourage people to never be concerned or worried unless you're
Yeah.
doing maybe like 10, and there might be a little bit of overload for them. But it's incredible what the plasticity is of the brain at that age, and they really
Yes.
just are sponges, and they can just soak it up if they have
Yeah.
comprehensible input. Like if you just play the radio in Mandarin, for example, in the corner, they're not really, they might become attuned to the sound and the sounds of the language, but they won't actually be able to understand or um, say anything unless it's comprehensible to them.
Correct. Yeah. That's, our co-op has taught Spanish a few times. And then I speak, I would say preschool level Spanish. I would love to say that I know more than I do, but I don't. But even what little I have spoke with them, they can pick up super easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this, but also as an adult, it's good to just learn new languages too, to challenge ourselves. We may not catch on as quick as our kids, but I am super excited to get on board with this and start seeing how I can fit it into our school at home, is because I want to start learning what the original is and how I can read the Bible in the original language and then be like, oh, that's what that word means. Oh, that's what he's trying to say there. Oh, that's how you would say that word. And getting to be able to dig deeper into my own Bible lessons and Bible
And
study.
speaking of, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
No, I just said, speaking of the older people, or that are I don't even know what would be a proper word for the parents. There is some literature that suggests language learning, and especially when people are approaching maybe their elderly years, can help delay the onset of dementia as well. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to. I was just reading an article about that the other day. So it definitely does have benefits for
Yeah.
adults as well.
I was like, what do you consider elderly? Because I'm over 40 now. So
No,
my
you've not. You're not there yet. Not there yet.
my friend's kid the other day came up to us and was like, "Hey, geriatric is anybody over 40?" And we were like, "You need to just shut your mouth because it's not over 40."
Kids are hilarious. When I was teaching, I taught kindergarten, first grade, and second and third when I was doing ELL, and
Mm,
yeah, kids thought I was like 80 or 90. Just it's humbling sometimes, but it's also hilarious. Just kids' minds.
yeah, my kids are always like, "Mom, was Grandpa alive back in World War I?" And I'm like, "No." Well, was he alive in the 1700s? And I'm like, No, he'd be 300. No, no, they have no, like, space and time does not mean anything to them.
Absolutely.
So, how long until, so you start this program today, 15
hmm
minutes a day. How long until they can, your kids can start reading? Is it also speaking? So, like, I know it's reading the Bible in the original, but can they also speak it too? How long will all this take?
Great question. So, um, for how long it takes, this is kind of in the realm of literacy. So, one quote that I heard when I was in my student teaching days was that children are like popcorn, and some of them pop really quickly, and some of them
Okay.
just take a little bit longer to pop. So, if we're speaking just from a big picture perspective, for a child to learn to read, they need to have something called phonemic awareness, which is being able to hear the sounds in language, and that
Mm-hmm.
starts even when they're in their mother's womb. So they're
Mm-hmm.
hearing the sounds that their mother is saying. Vowels are the loudest sounds, so children in the womb can hear those sounds like oh ooh, because you hear it like
Oh.
deep in your belly. So they're from that time exposed to language and hearing those sounds. But what we notice with students with dyslexia, typically people think it's something with their visual processing that they're struggling with it. It's actually a phonemic issue. They're not able to hear the sounds of words or be able to like extract those out. So if you say like, for example, like the word blast, we can um, cut up that word to go blast, blast. I could tell you the last sound is t. It also has a blend at the end, st. The vowel sound is ah, and it starts with a blend b. But someone who has dyslexia would struggle with that task, which then leads them to have a lot of trouble when they're reading, because when you're reading, when you're first starting, at least, you're decoding each letter and then blending it together. So if you read on the page b, l, a, s, t, the phonemic issue is that you can't hear all those sounds and then blend them together fluently. So that's, a big prerequisite for reading. So children need to be exposed to lots of like language games, rhyming,
Mm-hmm.
songs that help them build up those skills so that when they are in school and they are learning to read, they already have that phonemic base where they can, look at that letter, they know it sounds, they can put those letters together and form words. And that depends on each child. So,
Okay.
one thing I will say is Greek and Hebrew are a lot more phonetically um, regular than English. English
Okay.
has gone through a lot of changes throughout the centuries in
Yeah.
pronunciation. So, Greek and Hebrew, luckily, are very regular, and this letter makes this sound, and this vowel makes this sound, and
Okay.
there aren't really sight words like how we typically would teach them in a primary setting.
Yeah.
So, taking all that into account, a child in kindergarten, like where I was teaching, I was taught at inner city school, so it was maybe a little bit less. If I averaged it out, maybe 30% of students in kindergarten were reading at the end of kindergarten a
Yep.
kind of like level text. That might be a little bit more or less depending on where you're at. So with Greek and Hebrew, though, these are not languages that they're probably hearing in the home a lot. So, like I said, language learning is all about comprehensible input. My wife spends, if the kids wake up at like 7 and they go to bed at 7, so 12 hours a day they're hearing Greek, maybe
Oh.
5 to 6 hours a day they're hearing Italian. So they're hearing pretty a way bigger portion of Greek than Italian. So she's way more attuned to that. So with
Okay.
Biblingo, you would maybe be doing, 15 to 30 minutes a day. It might take them longer to be able to read with comprehension. Now, if you could just, sound out the letters on the page, that could happen very quickly, even within a few months. But to actually read with comprehension, you have to have vocabulary knowledge. You have to also be able to understand the flow of sentences. So even some grammatical things. So all of that takes time, and it might just depend on each individual child. Um, Now, speaking is a bit different because Biblingo is primarily focusing on reading. I mentioned a little bit about the adult kind of
Yep.
sphere that they have live classes.
Hmm.
and where the languages are actually spoken. So in the Hebrew kind
Yeah.
of weekly study sessions or classes, we're speaking in biblical Hebrew, and then for Greek we're speaking in Koine Greek, which means common. Koine
Okay.
means common. So that they won't really learn that unless you have a really big group of dedicated people
Right.
who are all learning together and then starting to speak with each other in those languages. But it's been done before. Modern Hebrew
Yeah.
was pretty much dead outside of liturgical contexts until the state of Israel in 1948, and so people just started talking to their kids, and people started talking together, and then now it's obviously it's not extinct anymore. So
Yeah.
it is possible, but they won't primarily learn speaking from the
Okay.
app, but they will start thinking in the language, and then eventually they could speak technically, just not at a fluent level for conversation.
That's okay. That's cool. So think of it a lot like the more you immerse your kids into reading English, the quicker they'll learn to read in English. The same with the Greek and Hebrew with Biblingo. The more you do it and the more consistently you do it, the quicker you pick up on it. And the best
Hmm.
part is this is an app that you can do on your phone or computer. So if your kids are like, "Hey, I'm done with all my schoolwork," you can be like, "Well, then go over and do your Biblingo then for the day," and they can get that done with. Or, like what happens probably in a lot of families is all of a sudden one kid starts doing it, and the next kid wants to start doing it, and pretty soon, now instead of doing math, you're doing Biblingo and Greek and Hebrew. Which,
Pretty much.
yeah, I mean,
We had a testimonial once that it's on the homeschool page. The parent said my child has learned more Greek in this time than French in school, because I guess
yeah,
the student was taking French in school. So it is very intuitive and very immersive, and it pretty much teaches the child basically how they learn their first language, just associating those images or videos with with the so they associate the picture or the video with the word. So if
yeah,
they see, if they're doing Hebrew, they see a picture of a man, it just says Adam. So now you
mm,
associate that picture with that word. Just like as a child, when you're learning to speak, like for example, with me, my first language was English.
yeah,
I just learned by associating, images or actions with a word initially. Like
correct.
my parents pointed to the ball and they said ball, and I learned what ball was. Eventually,
Yep,
after a while, I could say throw ball, and then after that, I could say I throw the ball, I want the ball,
right.
and I want to throw the ball with my cousins. So Biblingo does the same thing, where it's teaching you those basic things at first and building on them. So each level, you start with the words, and then those words then go into sentences, and then those sentences
Okay,
eventually go into stories. So you have words, sentences, stories, and they all
cool.
use the same vocabulary. So it's a very organic, immersive process that pretty much anybody can just jump right into.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to get into it this fall with my kids and to see if our co op may be doing it. I don't know. I'm not in charge of class schedules at co op, but it would be a great resource or at a church. And just to be able to have a community here that can, in this area, that would start learning Greek and Hebrew, and then next year, Aramaic and Latin. I know there's a lot of the classical conversation groups here in this area do a lot of Latin. So that
Mm-hmm.
I know still is very well used around here. Um, but the other ones, Aramaic is not one that is very popular either. So
Yes.
when does that come out?
So technically, don't hold me to this, but I think it's slated for the start of the 2026 to 2027 school year. So
Okay.
1 year from now.
1 year. And that will be about this. That will be the same way. You'll learn it just as how you could learn Hebrew and Greek.
Yes, so it's all of the languages are basically going to follow the same exact kind of um,
Okay.
how would I say? It's all the same. It's basically just copy and
Okay.
pasted, but just now it's in a different language. So it's the exact same
Same.
progression system that you would use for any of the other or encounter in any of
Okay.
the other ones.
That's awesome. That just makes it that much easier, especially, and then also it's on presented in a way that kids know, so they don't have to try to relearn a new way to speak a language. That's the one thing I don't like about Duolingo. I use that for something else, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't teach me the alphabet. It just starts straight in with words and sentences, and I'm like, these are great if I'm going to go to another country and speak this language, but if I really want to learn this language, I want to learn how this is sort of set up like on Biblingo.
Sure.
Um, and I missed that portion. So, all right. How cool is it to be able to read the Bible in Greek? Is it like give you cool status?
I feel like it's very humbling. I feel like I'm a very nostalgic person, I would say.
Mm,
My family came from, on my mom's side, came from Italy, and in 2016 I was able to go to the town where my family's from.
mm,
Italy is cut up into different regions. So my family's from a region called Abruzzo, which is basically on the eastern side. It's
okay.
central Italy, but on the eastern side. So it's in the mountains. The house where my family, like my family's house, it was basically a part of it was part of the town wall. So the town was
Mm,
constructed in like the 1200s. So part of the
wow.
house is like 800 years old. So I thought like, wow, this is like insane. I'm sleeping in this room, and right there's the wall that's
Yeah.
you know older than the U.S. and everything. So I feel like I have nostalgia a lot in that way. And when I read the New Testament in Greek, I feel like I'm totally taken back to that time. A lot of this is kind of diverting a little bit. There's a lot of debate on whether Jesus spoke Greek. So
Mm,
a lot of people now in the academic literature are starting to kind of shift a little bit, I would say. In first century Judea, you obviously have Aramaic as a very popular language. Hebrew at that time was not spoken as much. The Roman Empire primarily used Greek as its administrative language in the Eastern Mediterranean rather than Latin. So,
mm,
through different textual studies of passages in the New Testament, a lot of them say that this is actually probably originally specifically things like in the Beatitudes, they say this actually is probably a Greek original, not from Hebrew or Aramaic translated into Greek. So for me, it's just so cool to do, because I'm like, I could actually be reading the actual words that Jesus
yeah.
uttered, which is mind blowing. But I mean, you see it in the New Testament. A lot of the disciples had Greek names, like Philippos
Mhm.
is a lover of horses. So
Yeah.
Greek language was totally and language and culture was just totally saturated in first century Judea and Israel. And so I it I think for me it's humbling. It's humbling, I would say.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, when you read the Bible now and you don't always know how it translated when it's in
Mhm.
English, and then to be able to sit down with your kids and be like, this is what the Greek or Hebrew says, you actually know what the writers were meaning. Like
Mhm.
you don't have to do all the guesswork. You can be like, this is what it means, and this is what they were trying to say. And then through translation, we picked another word that we thought best fit. But being able to just sit there and be like, nope, the Greek word is this. That's where sometimes when I read it, I'm like, I really wonder what they're trying to say here. I really wonder
Mhm.
what the tone should be in this sentence. And we can say, well, because of the translation, we think it means this. It's like, no, really, like I want to know, like in that sentence, if there was something more to it than just now that it's been translated 14 times and we have, modern English. I want to go back. So I'm excited. I have not told my kids yet we're going to start this, but they're always along for the ride. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
excited to get to know how to read our Bible in the original and how it was originally meant to be, originally was spoken.
For sure. And translation is a really hard thing, because we have these texts and we don't always necessarily know what the intent was. How many times have we sent a text message to someone and it was totally
Yep.
misinterpreted? So translation is notoriously difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing is, when you know the originals, you can look at a passage and you can see maybe the 3 or 4 different ways that you could translate it. And so you can kind of in your mind know, okay, what the NASB or the ESV or whatever
Yep.
translation is, they're using, this, they're going with this for some reason, but these are also some other options as well. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it really helps in that place where you're reading your English Bible and they've gone with this one, but now for whatever it is, for apologetics reasons or just
Right.
uh, for whatever it may be, it is super helpful to know what some of those other options might be. And then I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to textual criticism, so it's really cool to see, especially what you're talking about with transmission history,
Yeah.
just to see how we've received like the New Testament and the Hebrew Bible just from over hundreds and hundreds of years, how it's been brought to us and preserved. So it's really something.
Yeah. My youngest is always the first one when we're doing Bible study. If it has like a footnote, he'll be like, "Oh, mom, hold on. I'll read the passage. Then we have to go back down to the footnote and say what, see what else it was saying." And sometimes it's just like they were saying, brothers, and it's down there, brothers and sisters. And I'm like, yes, they were dressing everyone. They're just putting brothers in there. But he
Sure.
loves that. So I think this is going to be really cool for him to be like, "Oh, mom," and he's 7. I have to think of his age. He's 7. So this is going to be where his brain is still just a sponge and can just absorb everything. Some days I'm like, "Where did you learn that?" And he's like, "Oh, I just, saw it over here." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." But um this is great. So you can use this app for large homeschool families. So young kids all the way to old kids can use the same program. You can all learn around the table together on the computer. Does each kid need their own license? You said email address. Do you have to pay per each kid? How does that work?
Yeah, so it depends a little bit. So theoretically speaking, we'd prefer for each student to have their own account because Biblingo has metrics that
Okay.
are individualized to each student. So, for example, like for me, I do Greek and Hebrew every day. I have a metric that says what percentage of the New Testament I know, how many words I've learned, um, how many lessons I've completed, and so it's very individualized to me. There's also a review section of Biblingo where every day we put it into the schedule for homeschool,
Mm-hmm.
but every day they do a review deck. It's basically flashcards of
Okay.
7 or 8 words that the algorithm chooses, and that's just based on you individually. So ideally, it would be great for each child to have their own. You could technically just get one license and then have all of the children use it, but it would just, you wouldn't be able to necessarily be able to track their
Okay.
learning as easily. So I would suggest for each child to have their own.
Yeah, I did see online that for families out there with larger families, um, with larger kids, there's a discount per student. So if you pay for one, the second student gets a reduction. There's a price reduced, and so on and
Yes.
so forth. So you're
Yes.
not paying full price for all of your kids. You are the more kids you have, the more there's a discount.
Yes. So the first child is regular price, and then the second and the third are 25% off, and then
Okay,
child 4 and beyond are 50% off. So,
perfect.
and also one thing I'd like to say, Laura, too, if anyone ever has any questions, my email is austin@biblingo.com. If you
Okay,
email me, I can send you a link to set up a meeting with me. If you want to go to biblingo.com/homeschool, you can also schedule a meeting with me there. I know you'd kind of
yeah,
mentioned the different like um, like large homeschools, small
hmm,
homeschool co-ops, all of those different types of schooling have lots of different considerations pedagogically. So I'd love to
yeah,
answer any questions, work with you through what incorporating Biblingo might look like in your specific context. So if you just go to biblingo.com/homeschool,
yeah.
there will be a section with my picture, and you can schedule a meeting. And I'd love to talk with you guys and figure out how to implement Biblingo with your homeschool co-op or homeschool group.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great thing for you guys all to utilize is to get in touch with Austin and say, like we want to learn Greek, or we only want to learn Hebrew, or this kid only wants to do this or that, and get a plan that is specialized for your family and that also fits your budget. So whatever that may be, set up a meeting with Austin and he could get you guys hooked up. So, really quick before we wrap it up and I tell our listeners the cool thing that we're doing together, anything else you want to say real quick?
So one thing I'd really like to say too is I know a lot of people in the homeschool space may already know about it, but really research if your state has ESAs, because Biblingo is becoming an approved vendor in many, many states like Arizona, Indiana. We're in a couple others as well. So on our homeschool website, it lists all the ones that we're currently approved for. So technically, your child could learn biblical Greek or biblical Hebrew for free, depending if you're, how much is left in your ESA account each year. But that's something I really want to encourage people to find out. There's lots of different websites that they could go to find out if there are ESAs in their state. I really stress school choice, having lived and taught in public school. I'm not like here to vilify public school by any means, because I know it's sometimes people's only option. But if it is an option and you have those ESA funds, I mean, you can send your child to private school. You can have tutors come to the house. You can completely customize their education and break them out of sitting in a desk for 6 to 7 hours a day. And but still, that depends. I know a lot of families have really tough situations with work, and that's not an option for them. But
Yeah.
I would encourage people to just advocate for school choice in your states and your local government. Just it's education is huge, and we only have so much time with our kids. So I'm really thankful that I'm able to hopefully be able to do this with my children. And I didn't know the biblical languages growing up at all. So for me, I think, what will my children be able to do by the time they're 18? Because I've only been learning really, strictly for maybe like 4 or 5 years. So I'm really excited to see what happens. And I'm really excited too, because in Christendom in general, the biblical languages have not been a thing that people have studied. In Judaism, obviously they're really into Hebrew. When I taught the Hebrew school, students in third grade were reading the Torah in Hebrew. They were translating, the Talmud in Aramaic and, English, and some of them even spoke Yiddish too, because they were Hasidic from like Eastern Europe. Like most of them were from had family from Russia, and that was the language that they spoke in Russia. But 4 languages, and they're in third grade, and they're already doing all this stuff. And then so it's unfortunate that it hasn't really been a thing in the last 2,000 years. But I really hope that now people will really start to I like to say reclaim our faith's rich linguistic heritage and the scriptural heritage that we have, and so that we could just pass down this to our kids and their kids after them. That's a huge theme in the law, that speak about this to your children when you rise up, when you walk along the way, when you lie down. So I'm really thankful for this opportunity, and hope and pray that a lot of good fruit will come out of it. And I can't wait to see, like, for example, with like your son, to just see all that he'll learn and do. And but just thank you so much for having me. It's been a blessing.
Well, thanks for being on here. That's Teach the Children was founded on Deuteronomy 6, the Shema. Teach your children. Not only is it love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, but teach your children, and so then, like the other Bible verses out there, they don't depart when they get old. They come back to what they know. And I think you're right. We haven't been the best at keeping up on teaching our children. And that's why, especially in the Jewish communities, they do know the Torah in Hebrew and English and the Yiddish and all that, because they don't care what the world says. We're going to teach our kids what we need to teach them, and then they can go on and learn other things. But I really feel like let's, when we stand before God on the final days, he's not going to say, well, what was your SAT score? Yes, that's important. But he's going to say, did you follow me? Do you love me? And did you tell people about me? And that's the most important thing we can tell our kids and teach our kids. And so if this is one more way that we can teach our kids about Jesus, then let's do it. Like anything to get them in front of the Bible and learning more about Him, then I'm all for it. So
Amen.
thank you for being on here. Like I said, one of the cool things that, so I learned about Biblingo from our pastor here at our church at Grace and Truth. He was like, one day we were talking, he's like, Laura, they're out there doing this homeschool thing. You guys need to hook up with them. So I reached out, we got together. And so what we're going to do, we're going to team up, teach the children and Biblingo, and we get to offer you guys a discount code. So if you are interested in anything we heard today, you're like, we really want to learn Greek, Hebrew. Next year, we want to get on board with Aramaic and Latin. The coupon code is this, and I will also leave this in the show notes, but it's Teach the Children 10, and that's all spelled out. So it's TEACHTHECHILDREN 10, the number 10. And that will give you 10% off of any purchase you want to. You can use it across the board. I will also leave my affiliate link. Oh my gosh, that's a hard word. My affiliate link in the show notes too, so you can also purchase through Teach the Children, get that discount code, and just the affiliate links don't necessarily mean anything to you, but it just helps. I can help promote Biblingo. I can get a little bit of a kickback. It goes back into the resource center. It's just another way that we can keep the lights on at the resource center. And that's awesome. But it also gives you guys a discount code for purchasing anything that may strike your fancy. So Austin, thank you so much for being on here. It was a pleasure talking with you about Greek and Hebrew. And maybe next year we can get on here and talk about Aramaic, because I'm interested in that one, and Latin. So
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. I can't wait. Yeah, I can't wait for next year.